afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Williamsburg City Council meeting of November 6th. Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Rogers?
Here.
Ms. Ramsey?
Here.
Mayor Pons? Vice Mayor Dent?
Here.
Ms. Kernshire? Here.
We have in our packet the minutes from the October 12th meeting. Is there any changes, corrections, alterations? Is there a motion?
I move that the minutes from October the 12th be approved.
Second.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernshire? Aye.
Okay. It doesn't look like we have any matters of special privilege this month. Is that correct, Mr. City Manager?
That's right.
All right. Takes us right into public hearings, and we have several of them today, 5 to be specific. And first is the public hearing to consider the appointments to the Williamsburg-James City County School Board representing the City of Williamsburg. Mr. Trivett.
Yes, as you all know, we go through the process of a reappointment, and the state code requires us to have a public hearing on applications for appointment. At this moment, we have 2 applications, and it's not a requirement to come to the public hearing and speak to the city council to be considered, but it is a requirement to have your application submitted by the close of today's public hearing. So we would ask that the city council open the public hearing and allow anyone to speak who would like to on the upcoming appointment of a school board member.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll open the public hearing and invite anybody who would like to come forward to speak on this matter. I do have 3 speakers cards. First one I have is Miss Amy Chen, who I believe is an applicant. Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to share why I would like to serve as a school board member representing the city of Williamsburg. I have 2 children who are here with me today, 2 children who are in the WJCC school system, and I have been a very involved parent to a student in WJCC schools since 2013. I'm proud of our public schools in this community. My children are thriving and learning. I'm deeply, deeply grateful to teachers, support staff professionals, and administrators at all of our schools. Serving on school board would be a small way to give back and to show appreciation to this community and to those working in our public schools for all they have given to my family and to all the families in our community. While my children and many children thrive in our public schools, there is a concerning academic and opportunity gap that students experience in our schools. As a community, we have the power to transform that narrative. And as a school board representative, I want to collaborate with and learn from teachers, school leaders, city and council leaders, city and county leaders, community partners, and advocacy groups to help close that opportunity gap and address the inequities that students and families face. I intend to apply my professional experiences in education to being a school board representative that engages in thoughtful discussions to make decisions that support and balance the needs of our students, teachers, staff, and families. I have been a classroom teacher. I've had the privilege to teach math to elementary and middle school students in WJCC schools. I can empathize with the joys and challenges of teaching, and I want to support our teachers to have manageable class sizes and access to resources that all students have opportunities to learn, to experience success, and to develop their unique interests. I've also worked to recruit and mentor science and math majors at the College of William & Mary to teach in underserved public schools. I know the importance of recruiting, retaining, and compensating teachers and support staff. I currently write and edit mathematics curriculum. I focus on standards-based learning and writing lessons in which all students see themselves in the math that they learn. My work involves research-based, standards-aligned curricula and assessments, as well as innovative technology-enhanced interventions and differentiation. I want students in WJCC to be able to access and connect to the curriculum in our schools. My professional experiences in classroom teaching, educational publishing, and teacher preparation in higher education drive my commitment to do right by students and to ensure that every student has access to a safe learning environment and space to grow where they and the adults around them feel supported and heard. As a school board representative, I will serve with empathy, with kindness, with humility, and with optimism. I will closely examine the issues and initiatives before the board and work with other school board members to make balanced decisions that are centered on providing equitable, high-quality educational experiences for our youth. And I will listen, I will observe, I will learn, and I will speak up as a voice for our residents, families, and students. It would be a huge privilege to serve our city as your school board representative, and I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Chen, and thank you for your willingness to serve. Next speaker's card I have is Todd Kraus. Welcome.
Do I just get the balance of the time?
No, we're going to give you your full 5 minutes.
All right, so hi, I'm Todd Kraus. I'm here to support Amy Chen as a candidate for the WJCC School Board. So she obviously listed off all of her qualifications, and it's not like I know more about her than she knows about herself. But I would like to emphasize 3 categories of characteristics that she has that I think definitely qualify her as for candidacy. First, as she said, she's an educator, right? And she didn't actually really emphasize the fact that she's taught at the middle school level. That's one cognitive and emotional set of characteristics of students. She's taught at the K through 3 level, which if you've been a parent and or an educator, you know that's a wholly different type of human being. And then she even has some experience working with kids with special needs, which is just totally different and more challenging in many respects. So it's rare to find one person who has experience at all those levels, especially teaching math. The second batch of characteristics is she actually, as she pointed out, works on curricula. So you and I all have experience in dealing with teachers, teaching our kids. That's one way of dealing with curricula. We also have our own viewpoints on how ridiculous or how miraculous a given curriculum is, and we all opine upon that as if we have some knowledge, but we're all a bunch of yokels, it turns out. She works in the part where you have to take what the yokels say and actually implement it in a way that won't get blowback from the parents and the teachers. That is something none of us, typically speaking, have any experience with, and you really want somebody like that on a school board. Of course, the most important thing is what she said also, what you want on the school board is a parent of WJCC kids. Her kids hang out on occasion with my daughter, and I know by experience, holy cow, if our kids were like her kids, we would be in a happy place, all right? So whatever she's doing it right, and we'd all do well to do the same thing. Not only that, but it also means that any brilliant or stupid decision that the school board makes, she's gonna bear the brunt of it just like the rest of us. So there's nobody I'd like more fighting for what's best for my kid than having Amy Chen as part of the school board. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker's card I have is Charles Morse. Welcome. If you just state your name and address for the record.
My name is Charlie Morse. Address is 103 Robert Elliff Road.
Thank you.
Right across the street from Amy and Jason and the girls. And I've known, first of all, I've been a teacher with the WJCC system. I retired in 2015 and taught for 15 years. So I was very happy to see when Jason and Amy came to our neighborhood that she was a teacher. I don't know what more I can say than what Todd just said. She's got all the credentials. She's a mom, and she's guided and advised her girls. She's taught in our system, as Todd said, in elementary and in middle school. and she's done this curriculum development. She's open-minded, she's a creative thinker, she's practical, and one thing I'd like to point out is she is very tough. Let's see, when was that, about a month ago, Amy? She gave me a call, and she said, could I take her to the hospital? And I said, sure. She said, I'm having some severe abdominal pain. Jason needs to take Madeline to an event at where was it? In Newport News, an important event, and would I take her to the hospital? I said, certainly. She was in severe pain, and I got her to the hospital, and it turned out she had a kidney stone. Now, if I had a kidney stone, I would tell my wife she needed to be with me, take me to the hospital. But Amy knew that that what she needed was the care of a doctor. She wanted her daughter to be at this event, and she said, I can do this with the help of my neighbor. And so I would say that characteristic is something important for the school board, and I hope you think about that and her other qualifications. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Next speaker card I have is Tuska Benz. Apologize for mispronouncing that. Welcome. If you just state your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Tushka Bendish. I live at 211 Thomas Nelson Lane in Williamsburg. I'm the mother of two children in the public schools, and I'm also here to speak strongly in favor of Amy Chen as an excellent representative for Williamsburg on the school board. I should also add that I am a teacher at William & Mary, chair of the history department. We've heard already that Amy Chen's credentials are impeccable. She is a former classroom teacher who knows the challenges that our students face. She's worked extensively in curriculum development. She's a mother of two wonderful children who have been students in the public schools. She's also an instructor and a mentor at William & Mary School of Education. But what I would like to emphasize are the intangible qualities, the character, that make Amy Chen an effective representative for Williamsburg on the school board. First of all, she listens well to the perspective of others. She will not be rushing to judgment. She is capable of building common ground among constituents and conflicting parties, and I find this a particularly important trait during a time of political polarization. She can model calm, measured response when discussions become heated. She also expects excellence from teachers, from parents, from children, and from community leaders. Amy Chen will be a wonderful member of our school board because she will bring us together rather than deepen the fissures in our community while representing the values that Williamsburg stands for: inclusion, compassion, accountability, and excellence. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker's card is Charles Leisure.
Okay, I'm Charles Leisure, 101 Governor Barclay Road, and I'm a candidate for the school board. I want to share, and I want to be on the board to share my life experiences and education to benefit the community. My experience can help create stronger ties between the board and the stakeholders to improve the schools. I've been a teacher from K to 12. I've been a school administrator. I've been a district administrator, and I have a world of experience in solving issues within schools, working with boards, working with parents, and seeing my schools and teachers succeed. And I think we need to care about the most important issue we have in schools today is kids. We need to care about the kids, we need to do what's best for the kids, and we need to work with the communities to do what's best for the kids. And I've had years of experience, I've had years of successes, I've had a few ups and downs like any administrator has, but I've worked through them with the parents and with the communities, and we've solved them. And I want to do that here. Williamsburg has a wonderful school system, excellent teachers, a student body that's second to none, and I want to continue improving upon that. And I thank you for your listening.
Thank you for coming forward, and thank you for your willingness to serve. That concludes my speaker's cards, but if anybody else would like to come forward and speak to this, please do so. Okay, thank you very much. So we will be interviewing these candidates this month and then come forward with a decision in December. So no action is required today, but just want to really, again, thank each of you for coming forward today and sharing a little bit about yourselves and, most importantly, your willingness to serve the community. So thank you very much. Okay. Take us now to public hearing PCR number 23-020, consideration and action regarding the request to rezone property located at 530 Millneck Road from LB, the Limited Business Corridor District, to the Single-Family Dwelling District Planned Development Residential District. Ms. Griffin.
Yes.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pons and members of City Council. The staff did today receive a request by the applicant to table this application until your next meeting.
So I move that City Council table the request for rezoning of 530 Millneck Road.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernshire?
Aye.
I do want to note that I did have several speakers cards on this, and there will be an opportunity during public comment should you wish to speak on this matter. Okay, next public hearing is PCR number 23-016, consideration and action regarding the request for a special use permit to operate an automotive sales establishment in the B2 Corridor District at 3030 Richmond Road. Ms. Griffin.
Yes. The applicant, David Julian, is the owner of the Williamsburg Chrysler Jeep Dodge dealership located at 3012 Richmond Road, and he is requesting a special use permit to operate a standalone Kia dealership at 3030 Richmond Road. The property is located in the B2 Corridor Business District, and in order to have a vehicle sales and service establishment in the B2, there must be a special use permit approved by the City Council. The building would be around 18,000 to 2,500 square feet. As you know, anytime we're looking at a special use permit, there are 6 criteria that you must consider in order to approve, and all 6 criteria must be compatible with the use in the particular district. And the first criteria is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. The second is if it's in harmony with the B2 district, and then if it's in harmony with the neighborhoods and the surrounding existing and proposed development. This property, 3030 Richmond Road, is located in the Corridor Commercial District. This is a land use designation within our comprehensive plan, and this land use designation says that we can have hotels and restaurants and tourism and retail uses here. It also says that uses here should be supported by automobiles, and staff has reviewed this and feels that this particular use is compatible with the 2021 comprehensive plan. The next criteria for us to review is a corridor business district. This is actually the zoning district that implements the corridor commercial land use designation. It's our B2 zoning district, and it also says that this should be the use of future hotels, restaurants, other retail establishments, and it should be used heavily by automobiles. We feel that this property located at the corner of Richmond Road and Waltz Farms Drive is compatible with the B2 district. Formerly, this property was the location of the Motel 6. The third criteria is the character. We want to ensure that the particular use is going to be compatible with surrounding neighbors and also compatible with the community and the corridor. We believe that this particular dealership and the design is in character. We believe the use is in character. Again, just up the road at 3012 is the Williamsburg Jeep, Chrysler, and Dodge dealership. The next three criteria deal with the, whether the public services are essential here and whether this particular use is adequately served by public facilities. This also is going to look at ecological and scenic and historic importance, and also if the particular site will be designed properly. This particular property is in the CP district. This is our architectural review district, and this has gone conceptually to the ARB. This is the design here. The ARB does have some simple changes that they would like the applicant to make, and we are waiting now to get those conceptual reviews, and we believe that in the next 2 meetings they will come back and they'll actually be able to get approval by the ARB. There are no ecological issues with this property or any archaeological issues that we see with this property. Therefore, we feel that it is compatible. The next one is whether this site is actually going to be designed properly. This is the conceptual site plan design. There are going to be an additional 74 parking spaces here. They are in compliance with the zoning district when it comes to parking. Here you can see open space. They are providing over the required open space for this particular district. There will also be landscaping. At this point, they are providing over the required landscaping. We will be able to review specific landscaping trees when the site plan is provided. They will only do a site plan if the city council approves the special use permit. Staff therefore recommends approval of this particular application. We believe that it is in keeping with all of the criteria that we've named, and the Planning Commission at their meeting on October the 18th also approved unanimously this particular application. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and the applicant is also here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. So before we open the public hearing, does any council members have questions for staff?
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Just one question on the traffic. Oftentimes in the past, we've had questions about, Waltz Farm Drive and as a traffic signal. So do you have a sense for what kind of traffic would be created and what impact that would have at Waltz Farm and Richmond Road?
Yes, the city engineer did ask the applicant's engineer to look at the traffic impact there, and they did provide the Institute of Transportation's ITE trip generation, and what was shown that the trips for the Motel 6 versus this particular property or use is actually lower, and so the Motel 6 had a higher traffic generation than than the Kia dealership would. And so it was concluded that there would not be a signalization required at this particular stop.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. I just had one. I know that there used to be a motel there, Motel 6, and that the property was originally slated for motels, restaurants. Have we had any requests from lodging facilities to build at this location?
No, I've been with the city for about 1.5 years. I've not received any, and I have not seen any office from the past for this particular property.
Thank you.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin.
Yes.
Okay, I will open the public hearing. Invite the applicant to come forward. Mr. Getty.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm Vernon Getty of 1177 Jamestown Road. It's my pleasure to be here representing David Julian. David's here with us. You may know David. He's a resident of the city and actually a former planning commissioner. David is the owner of the dealership at 3012 Richmond Road, the Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Kia, and one more I'm sure I'm forgetting. But for many good business reasons, David needs to separate the Kia dealership out from his other brands. Some very brief history. David's father, Alan Julian, originally got in the business here by purchasing Pittman Chrysler Plymouth, which is located where High Street now sits. In 2003, the city went to Mr. Julian and asked him to relocate the dealership to make way for High Street, which he did to its current location. David had the opportunity to contract to purchase this land at 3030 Richmond Road. Great location for him to relocate the Kia dealership. It's a block from his existing dealership, and think it's a great use for this site. Tevi has given you all a very thorough report. We'll keep it brief, and if you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer them. Otherwise, we would respectfully ask you to approve this.
Any questions for the applicant?
I have one quick one. Thanks, Vernon, for coming and presenting in front of us today. I think you touched on it very briefly there at the beginning. Obviously, it is so close to the current Williamsburg Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram location. I know that tagline because that's where I lease my current car, so I'm there often.
Yeah.
Why is it a separation of physical locations rather than an addition onto the current facility?
Oh, I don't think the current site would accommodate separate dealership.
Okay. So the decision was just made to have an expansion, but into a different parcel rather than
Right.
having those operations with Kia maintained at the current dealership. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Getty.
Great, thank you.
Would anybody else like to come forward and speak to this? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and come back to council for conversation, comments. I'll just start off. I think, given where we are in lodging and hotel, restaurant business, I don't think we're going to see an applicant come forward for something like that. And so, in my mind, this is a great use for this piece of property, and it certainly just to support a local business person who's got many decades here in the city operating a successful business. So I think it's something that I could support.
Yeah, I agree, and as Ms. Griffin pointed out, there's been no other interest in the property, and a respected businessman, but also very supportive and generous to the community, and I think it would be an asset to that corner.
I really have nothing to add. This seems to make sense in this particular location for reasons that make sense. And I think it's great to have, opportunity to buy a car at Williamsburg instead of having to go someplace else to do so. So it sounds like a good use of the property.
Yeah, I'm very supportive of it as well. As was stated, Mr. Julian is not only a respected businessman in the community, but is very involved in the community. And in our conversation this morning, it was actually Vice Mayor Dent who mentioned one of the reasons why a separate location was needed was in terms of getting allocation, that it's very difficult, I guess, to get enough cars if you don't have sort of a set-aside dealership. So this will help increase the inventory and availability of cars for all of the residents. So I'm supportive as well.
And I am as well. I remember finding in campaigning, sometimes you come across people with a wide variety of interests in the city, and then sometimes those in which their local issue is unipolar, and there are those right off of Waltz Farm Drive. I remember off of Ashwood, who said if we could just make the former Motel 6 site more sightly, then we'd be doing them a big favor. And now it's just hardscaped parking, and I'm excited to see an expansion for the dealership there soon. I'm in favor as well.
Thank you. Would somebody like to make a motion then?
Yes, so I move that City Council approve PCR 23-016.
Is there a second?
Second?
Ms. McKay?
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernshire?
Aye.
Motion passes. Good luck. All right, takes us now to consideration and action regarding the proposed resolution 23-19, authorizing the issuance of general obligations bond in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $10,500,000 and provide for the form and details thereof. Dameron? Oh, there she is.
See where to do it.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of City Council. Resolution 23-19 is asking City Council to authorize the issuance of bonds. I want to note that we have that resolution, first of all, deals with the process and the form of the bonds. And we have Mr. Kevin White with us today, who's the city's bond counsel, who is prepared to answer any questions you might have in regard to that. But we also have David Rose, who is with Davenport and Associates, the city's financial advisors, and he has a few remarks that he would like to make in regards to the bond financing. And with that.
Good evening, or good afternoon, Mayor, I should say, members of council. Barbara's going to hand out what's going to be up on the screen, so if y'all want to take any notes or what have you, can do that. All righty. The opportunity for those in the audience, we are the financial advisors to the City of Williamsburg and have been doing this now for about 30 years, so it's very much appreciate that. Pleased to be here today. Will not be too long. We've got some good news to report and are hopeful that y'all will move forward on the resolution that Kevin and his folks have put together. So with that said, just a little bit about our goals and objectives today and what we've been doing. As I indicated, being your financial advisor, we work with you on your capital improvement program, your CIP if you would, and have been looking at that, monitoring that, working towards financial strategies. And the CIP that we're talking about is that 5-year period from 2023 through 2027. We've been asked to help you update that in terms of our plan of finance, which we're all underway, and I'll give a little bit of that for the audience. But as you know, there have been a few changes with regard to costs and estimates, and as a result, we're back today to ask you to approve a process that we did over the last few weeks with regard to getting some funding. So, as I indicated, we're underway on the capital plan. It was most recently back in February, hard to believe, about 9 months ago. We were in front of you, my colleagues and I, and we talked about funding strategically almost $50 million. And that was for police station, library, and some other needs that you've identified over that 23 to 27 fiscal years. We did an initial financing last year. It was $24.5 million. Our timing was quite good. We closed on that in October, and as a result, we had a fixed rate of 3.1%. Part of that was because, again, the city is so highly rated and is so desirable in the credit markets. None of that has changed. You continue to be in that mode, and we see ourselves moving forward in the initial plan with a second tranche in calendar year 2025. Again, total just a shade under $50 million. So the plan has been updated. Fast forward some 8 or 9 months, and really 2 major drivers have changed. The first is that there is roughly an additional $10 million more on the front end, and that ties to the library and some other estimates. But on the back end, there's about a $4 million savings as it ties into the other capital projects in the latter part of those years. So what has been roughly $50 million, slightly under, will now be slightly under $55 million. Plus, the timing of some of those needs are such that we have recommended to staff in turn has been in front of you to suggest that we move forward and borrow now roughly $10 million. That'll complete what we need for the next year plus, and it'll allow us to continue without slowing anything down. So with that said, what we would look at is that next borrowing after that will be delayed about a year just from pure cash flow, Projects are not being delayed, but simply the timing of when we need that last borrowing, if you would. And that last borrowing was originally, as I said, 2025. That looks to be now 2026. And instead of being 24.5 million, that will be 20 million. So all told, we're talking about a differential of roughly 5.5 million on the overall CIP. So you may recall when we were in front of you historically back in February for the various meetings, including the workshops, we said that to effect that initial adopted CIP, that 49 million, was going to be the equivalent, that's the key word here, the equivalent of about 5 to 6 pennies. And you can see that there. 5 pennies if it were done all at once, the equivalent of almost 6 pennies over time. Well, the good news for you is that the way in which the cash flows have operated, the overall structural balance of the city is, you're well underway to having those dollars to take care of that adopted CIP. The updated CIP is about the equivalent of 1 more penny, and you can see that impact basically is in about 2028. That's when we need the equivalent of another 2.5 pennies. It remains to be seen if we have to do any specific equivalent raising of a real estate tax, but there are any number of revenues in the way this city is budgeted, so we feel good about that and are not worried about you being able to fund that as you've already taken care of the roughly 3 pennies that were the equivalent here in this fiscal year. So again, moving along, we are positive. For those in the audience, the city has credit ratings that are very near the top of what you can have in the marketplace, and that speaks to not only your strategies, your plans, you have a series of financial policy guidelines that I'm going to talk about in a minute, but you also have demonstrated structurally balanced budgets over the years, and none of that appears in jeopardy. So I mentioned you have some financial policies. There's 2 of them. One I'm going to talk about for the moment, then we'll talk about the second one. The first is what we call debt to assessed value. That's just the pure amount of debt versus the real assessed value, the actual taxable assessed value. Your policy states that you won't go anywhere above 3%, hope to be within that 2.75 to 3% level. We estimate that after the entire CIP is borrowed, we won't go above 2.3%. So we will have a comfortable margin. I would also point out that when we look at the subsequent years, the denominator that we use is very conservative. So we feel very good about that. Don't see ourselves being anywhere close to that, if you would, as a governor. The second one is the debt service, the actual payments annually versus your overall governmental expenditures. The good news here as well, we see ourselves going closer to that floor, certainly nowhere near the ceiling. I think in reality, given my history with you, going back some 30 years, and we've always set it up this way, once again, that denominator has been very, very conservative. I'm not concerned at all that we will even go close to that 9%. I think we'll be considerably under that when we look at the actual history of the city, even during difficult times that are national or regional. We've not broached that. I feel good about that. So with that said, again, just to wrap this up for the moment, we see ourselves doing about 5 million, 5.5 million overall additional funding to effect that 5-year CIP. We're asking for your approval to do that 10 million now. I indicated the penny impact range, and you're well underway to taking care of that without having to effectively raise taxes. And again, we're going to continue to be in compliance with your debt policies. Don't see a reason why that will not continue. So if I could turn then to the $10 million request, what we did, as you can see here, we issued a request for proposal to banks back in mid-October, and we received 6 responses. That is to tell you that there is a very strong interest and belief in what Williamsburg is doing. 6 responses is very good, and the responses themselves were better than what we had estimated. We are recommending TD Bank, which is a very big, large national, international bank, coming primarily out of the D.C., Northern Virginia, Maryland area in terms of our correspondence. They have indicated, which we care a lot about, that we can prepay this anytime without penalty. So I feel like the flexibility of doing that is important. We had estimated and hoped that we would be under 5%. Right now, our interest rate is actually slightly under 4.6%. What we will know is the exact rate if we give them the approval. We're hoping that y'all will do that today, and then we believe we can lock that in tomorrow. Technically, we're waiting on their formal credit approval. We're not worried about that. That is their process. They typically, well, not typically, that's as standard practice, will issue a final yes with regard to the credit, but given how strong you are and their knowledge of Williamsburg, we don't see that in any way being something that concerns us or up in the air. That said, should strange things happen, we have several banks right behind them that can also fill the void. That said as well, we've got a little schedule here. One more thing, just to give you a couple points before I get to that. I mentioned this, the credit approval, and as I indicated, prepayable at any time, and the payments themselves, we've worked out, are in line with what Barbara and Drew have planned for the overall budget, so nothing here that gives us any pause. So finally, my last page, if you would, as I indicated, October 13th was the day we sent that request out, and we did that, by the way, to over 100 banking institutions. And so we scanned the whole nation, if you would, and that's how we normally do that. We received the proposals I indicated on November 1st. We evaluated those. Here we are today, hoping that we can have a resolution, literally and figuratively, with the public hearing that we're holding, and then we see closing at the end of November. With that, Mayor and members of council, I'm happy to answer any questions and appreciate this, some more positives.
It strikes me that the interest rate is much lower than what we hear on the news today when we talk about residential borrowing. Can you speak a little bit about what the difference is?
Yes, sir. So a couple of things. Number one, this is on a tax advantage, tax exempt basis, if you would. You and I as individuals are not able to borrow on a tax exempt basis, but local governments and other not-for-profits have that ability. So that's the first thing. The second is that this is an interest rate that is guaranteed for 10 years. So again, what we're really seeing is the very shortest rates. The 1 and the 2 years might actually be higher if we just asked for that. But I feel like we've got the best of both worlds because we're able to get a lower rate than a 1 or 2 year rate. At the same time, we can prepay it at any time without penalty. So we're getting both of those. But to go back to your question directly, besides the tax exemption advantage, it is, again, the credit rating. I mean, from a perspective of institutions that are going to put their money with Williamsburg, when you're as highly rated as Williamsburg, it's safe to say they are not worried that their money will be recouped when they come calling. So that's, again, one of the great advantages that we see. And frankly, without getting into names, we took in some bids literally within a day of that at another city that's not nearly as rated, and we saw that differential was almost 2 percentage points higher. So it is very much clear when you have your house in order, you will benefit in terms of markets.
I appreciate that. And, you talk about having our house in order. I think the city has done very well through decades now with good physical management. But I think part of what you had said to me the other day, which was also, I think, important, is they not just look at your past, but they also look to see where you're investing. Talk a little bit about that, because I think it's important when the community wonders why we're borrowing this money and how that relates to our financial position.
Well, that's a great question, or a good point, Mr. Mayor. We sometimes get a question, well, if we had no debt outstanding, would we be AAA? And you've got an element of that. And the answer is typically by rating agencies, they're not going to tell you exactly, but typically no, because they expect you to invest in your community. And when we turn around and see your multi-year capital improvement program and the things that are down the road, what they want to see is a robust investment in a community, particularly one like this that is so desirable for people to live, work, play, tourism, what have you. So I think that what we are also showing them, to your point, is the future. We give them not only these ratios and why we think we're going to be in good shape, but they also see the history of your various revenue sources. They see other elements of what's going on in the region. And so from their perspective, going forward, Williamsburg, if you want to look at it this way, from their perspective, is a good investment. They're not worried about you coming through in the future. So hopefully that hits on maybe some of the things you're thinking about. But we feel good about it. I mean, I've seen it for so long. Years ago, my parents, when they were alive, lived here. So I know the world that we're here. And I think we've got a really bright future.
And it's not just the rating agencies that like to see us make those investments, it's our community. So thank you for that. Mr. Vice Mayor, do you have any questions?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the presentation, but more importantly for the partnership with the city over 30-plus years and providing sound advice, so we are in this favorable position that we could consider this $10.5 million. Not a question, but just to stress one of the things you said, because I just want to make sure that everyone heard that the 5 to 6 pennies is not a tax increase, but it's just that we will need to have those 5 to 6 pennies with some other revenue source moving forward. It doesn't mean we're raising taxes 6 cents. And then, because we were talking about rating agencies, how do you see the impact from this borrowing on the rating? I know it's not a science that you can say exactly what it's going to be, but what do you see with your experience?
So Vice Mayor, we are not actually going to approach the rating agencies here, because this will be what we call a direct bank loan, and it does not require from the bank itself, TD Bank, another credit rating. They're comfortable with the existing ratings. They're also comfortable that they don't need a sort of another verification of it. But at some point, when we do what we've done before, like the $24.5 million, that was what we called a public sale, and we actually went to those credit rating agencies. But what we also did, to your point, when we went to them, we talked about the overall $49 million program. So they have already seen this program. Granted, it's roughly $5 million more, or at least expected to be over the next 3 to 4 years. But we don't see a change in that. That could always happen. Again, the way the rating agencies operate is that they are supposed to regularly, routinely review a city when debt's outstanding. We've seen that usually it's every 1 or 2 years. I would point out for the audience, they don't charge us when they do that, and they don't have a set date or time. They will just do what they call it surveillance, and they look at that. Again, they're supposed to do it every so often. We don't control that, but they nevertheless see your annual audits that come out, and you've got another one coming out just in a couple of months, so if not sooner. So again, they just monitor what happens, but we don't see a change at this time.
Thank you.
Ms. Crenshaw, any questions before the public hearing?
Just one question, but first, thank you so much. Really appreciate your thorough explanation of everything here, and really to the Vice Mayor's point about, this is really an ongoing process of many interlocking pieces and moving parts, and so there's no one thing, about to focus in on, I think, because I think this is about financing and vision, kind of to the mayor's point too, about where are we going and what are we trying to achieve, and then careful stewardship, which, I think that it's seen that over time, we've certainly had that, and I thank you. But I wanted to go back to, if you could, page 7, just something that I just want to clarify to make sure, you see numbers, and I am very grateful for your expertise, and seeing this, what we're talking about today, this additional borrowing requirements of 10 million, but really, there's an adjustment of timing, is kind of what you were talking about earlier. We are adjusting the timing of some of this money, and then that additional 5 million, really we're talking about the projects like the police station and things that we have coming down that we see now that we are going to need, and absolutely no question in my mind that a new police station is the right vision for our city. So I just kind of want to clarify that there really isn't additional borrowing on top of some of it, not additional 10 million on what we've said before, but it's really, again, this like interlocking process of timing, stewardship, and financing to kind of achieve what we need to for our city.
Yeah, absolutely. So to your point as well, that first $24.5 million, we are working through it and spending those dollars. As you indicated, what's happened is some of that timing has moved up, and some of the costs in that early part have moved up. But on the flip side, that second plan borrowing is actually moved down in terms of both cost and the timetable by virtue of getting all 10 million now. So we've basically taken some of the pressure off of the 25 fiscal year and moved it out one more year. That benefits all of us meaning the city, in terms of cash flow and debt service and what have you. And again, we've been of the mindset, let's do as we call just-in-time financing. That's sort of no official term, but it's just a term of art that we use so that, again, while the rates were good, we borrowed those dollars, got those set through the construction, and that's all not moving, not changing. So we've set this up in such a way that we never know what rates are going to be in the future, but we want to be flexible, and as I indicated, we want to make sure we have the dollars there as you need them. Think of it like a construction loan. If someone's building a house or building something on their property, they want to be there while the workers are out there. We don't want to tell them, guess what? Come back in a month, and that's really expensive. We're not in that mode. We're going to be able to continue to move, just like I said, continuously. And that's sort of what all of this further solidifies. So hopefully that's clarified that.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I think everything's been well asked for this part of the public hearing.
David, thank you for the presentation. It's good seeing you again this week. My only question would be, a couple people have thanked you in Davenport as well for decades of strong financial advisement to the city. Could you give us a feeling for the level of borrowing where we are now, even with this $10 million bond not reaching the floor of the floor-to-ceiling policy that we set for ourselves, how that stacks up historically with some of the borrowing we've done in the past for other capital projects?
So that's a great question, Mr. Rogers. So I go back to the days when we had no debt at all, but at the same time, we were actually a much poorer local government. We had no policies then, and we had very little fund balances, meaning we'll call it rainy day dollars. So we put a lot of those things into the overall mix, if you would. The first financing we did, probably, and I say solid by 30 years ago, don't hold me to it, was $10 million. On an adjusted basis, 30 years ago, some people faster with math than maybe I am, but I would say $10 million 30 years ago, probably like doing a $40 million financing today. I mean, things have ratcheted up that much. And those days, that was relative to those percentages and ratios. I don't recall per se, but I can tell you it was like doing a lot, and we needed to do some things, and they were not elective. They were things we absolutely had to do as a city because a lot of things had come to its end of life all at one time. So I remember, for example, the old Stryker building and what have you. So I feel like when I look at where we are today, and I look at what Drew and his staff have done, I feel like the overall base, if you would, of the city's finances is much stronger, much deeper, much wider, if you would. And the good news, if you want to call it good news, is I've watched some of the recessions. I've watched the financial crisis. I've been here through the terrible tragedy and nationally when we had the 9/11. And we've been able to get through all of those, financially. I'll speak to that element, of course, only. And we've gotten through all that, and we've been strong and stable. So in some ways, ironically, for me, as your advisor with my colleagues, of course, it's not the sheer numbers that I look at. It's really the ability to meet those challenges. And I feel better today than I did 30 or so years ago in doing that. So that, I don't know if that's helpful. I mean, we could always go back and look at some things, but that's sort of how I look at this.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. So that's what I was hoping to hear, and what I think we know is the case, that even though today's borrowing is on a total pool of almost 5 times that, when we last were borrowing such a significant portion, we didn't have the reserve fund, we didn't have the policies of debt to expenditure ratio. So your strong financial stewardship, same with our finance department, has gotten to a place where we can comfortably make this decision today. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. Anything to add?
No, I think Mr. Rose covered it very well.
All right, thank you. If there's no more questions for Mr. Rose, Mrs. Dameron, I will open the public hearing. If anybody would like to come forward to speak to this, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and come back to council for consideration. Our conversation. Additional thoughts?
The only thing I would say, I think we got a much better interest rate than we thought we were going to, and so that's always good news.
Yeah, none for me. Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt your motion, but I think in borrowing this money to do the projects that make the city a safer, better place is important. And you just look across the street and look at the new fire station to see where this money has gone. And as you watch the new police station come forward, you'll see it as well. So, thank you.
A true investment. So I move that City Council approve Resolution 23-19 as submitted.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher?
Aye.
Okay, takes us to item E. It's a public hearing regarding the consideration and action concerning the proposed Resolution 23-20, authorizing a budget amendment for the fiscal year end June 30th, 2024. Ms. Dameron?
Good afternoon again. Resolution 2320 is really a cleanup kind of administrative act. It deals with appropriating funds that the city has, grant funds, revenue that the city's been able to secure to take care of some things like public safety, law enforcement. The police has been fortunate to get an ARPA grant to help with law equipment. And then, of course, it deals with the proceeds that you just approved from the bonds. Staff recommends that you approve Resolution 23-20 is submitted.
Is there any questions for Ms. Dameron?
Just one question, a law enforcement equipment grant, so this is completely outside of other ARPA funding?
Yes, it
correct?
is. Yes, it is.
And these are not the funds that we already collected?
No, this is totally separate, more of a specialized pot of money.
Okay, good.
Questions? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing and again invite anybody to come forward. See a lot of faces, but not a lot of comments. That's good. I'll close the public hearing and come back to council for a motion or conversation.
So I move that City Council approve Resolution 23-20 as submitted.
Second?
Thank you, Ms. McKay.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher?
Aye.
Okay, takes us to our monthly financial statement. Ms. Dameron,
Yes,
sit down soon.
I just have a few highlights for this month. From the general fund, I wanted to note that our business licenses show an increase of approximately 100,000 comparing FY '24 to '23. Recordation taxes realized is almost double compared to the previous year. Revenue that was recorded in October for meals tax decreased by 2%. However, this was due to delinquent collections that came in at the very 1st of November, and I couldn't recognize them in October. Had we received those funds before October 31st, the city would have realized a 2.7% increase compared with the prior year. Lodging tax, though, continues to decrease compared to the previous year. October was about 3.4% less than the previous year, bringing the year-to-date decrease, I think I misspoke, a 3.4% decrease, bringing the year-to-date to 6.6% decrease. Overall, the remaining revenues and expenditures are performing in line with the general fund budget. I did want to note some changes to the presentation in your packet this month. In the past, encumbrances were added to expenditures. I've been wanting to pull that out for a while. So this month, you see reported in the report just expenditures. You'll note at the bottom on page 4, I have a separate line item for encumbrances. And then also you'll note that it's pulled out on page 2 as part of an assignment from fund balance. And I give an estimated fund balance for the period as well. And then in the capital improvement fund, sales tax revenue increased 15% compared with October of '22, bringing the year-to-date increase over last year to about 6%. In the tourism fund, the historic sales tax increased 23% compared to October of '22, bringing the year-to-date increase to almost 20%. And the $2 lodging tax increased 6% compared to October of '22, bringing the year-to-date decrease to about 5% compared to the previous year. And then in the utility fund, we do continue to see a decline in water consumption of about 3.6%, and you can see that follow through to the revenue. The revenue actually decreased about 13.6%, and some of that's due to the timing of when our bills are sent out and collected. And I'm also investigating that, though, toward compared to the previous year. I haven't come up with a conclusion yet, but I'll continue to analyze that. Otherwise, the revenues and expenditures are performing in line with the budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions. Mr. Vice Mayor?
No questions, thank you.
None for me.
Thank you, Ms. Dameron. Okay, monthly departmental operating reports, and this is where somebody gets to take a turn in the barrel.
Today, we're going to ask Mr. Reed, our new Director of Public Works, to come forward and talk to the council about himself a little bit and the department's progression. Thanks, Jack.
Well, welcome, Mr. Reed. I'm glad to see you here today. I know you're filling some big shoes, but here you're up for the job.
Yes, sir, and good afternoon. I guess just a little about myself. Most recently from Smithfield, where I was the Director of Public Works and Utilities. I've got roughly 20 years, mainly in utilities and public works. Bachelor's degree from Bluefield University, and my master's is from Virginia Tech. So just a few updates from the department. Our leaf removal plan began today. The project runs from November 6th through January 12th. There are 5 collection 5 collections for each route during the months of November, December, and January. The routes are posted on our website as well as our social media channels, along with a color-coded map so residents can determine which route they're associated with. The four-way stop at South Henry and Francis Street. We began our warrant analysis, and our preliminary report would be to leave the traffic signal in place. We have our peak counts, but we still need to get a more solid 8-hour count. Our peak counts are up to 300 trips per hour. Our concerns are that the current traffic is working well, but during the tourist season, the non-residents may not be able to use the intersection as well as the residents can. We would continue to gather more data if you would like, but our preliminary recommendation would be to leave the signal in place. Just a little bit more on what we're working on in the future is soon we'll be updating our water and sewer master plans as well as our street and stormwater master plans. What this is it will examine the age and condition of our infrastructure and help us build out our 5-year and beyond repair and replacement schedules. We will look at things like the filter plant, all of our pump stations, as well as our underground infrastructure. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
So, masters from Virginia Tech, I assume you and Aaron probably have a secret handshake.
Yes, sir.
So you mentioned, so welcome, glad to have you with us. You mentioned the traffic light out there, and I know a lot of folks, it's kind of a mixed bag. Some like the four-way intersection, saying that they're able to traverse that intersection feeling safer, and then even quicker, but I appreciate that you still doing some analysis on that and you recommend a light. Any consideration for a pedestrian cross light, the beaker, somebody standing there can hit the button and that triggers walking across the street, particularly as you come from that P5 parking, I believe it is?
We have not looked into that, but we can add that into what we're looking into.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Then you mentioned the word sewer, and I've got to mention sewer roaches. I hear a lot of people talking about it around the city. Any thought on that? Do you bring any intellectual prowess to how we can remedy this problem?
Our utility superintendent actually has a great plan. We can add an acid that will keep the cockroaches at bay. We've talked to HRSD. They're okay. It's a boric acid. Apparently the cockroaches don't like that, and it'll keep. We're going to try that in the manholes where we're having issues, and we feel like that should alleviate the problem.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're thinking about it. Vice President, Mayor.
Welcome, Mr. Reed. Glad to have you here. In reference to the traffic signal, I go through there numerous times. Yesterday I went through several times, and it's the first time I've seen a traffic jam, and it was actually the bus was turning off of Francis onto Henry Street and couldn't make the turn due to the stop sign that was in the middle of the road. I was getting out of my vehicle to help her. She was it was obviously weighted very well. She was out of the bus trying to move it, and she couldn't move it. Fortunately, another driver on that side helped her move it so she could get the bus around the corner. So, but in all the times that I've been through there, the four-way stop has worked really well. Just so happened yesterday the bus couldn't make the turn.
I just want to say welcome and thank you. Thank you for all you do and everything you're about to do. This is very exciting. And actually, just to the mayor's point about the, kind of looking into the pedestrian crosswalk signalization there and anywhere, one thing I just kind of want to add and put a pin in your head is about speaking crosswalks, so that those who have sight impairment, can listen and cross safely. I think that's an area where we may be able to make improvements in terms of pedestrian safety for those who may rely more on hearing than seeing. And then the other thing, when you mentioned the infrastructure master plan, that I'm kind of geeky about this stuff, and that sounds pretty exciting. So I am looking forward to seeing what, kind of when you step back and you look at the big picture about what improvements we can make to the things that, frankly, I'll speak from the eye, may take for granted, because when they're working, you don't even really think about it. So again, thank you for being here and for, bringing your expertise to Williamsburg.
And thank you and welcome, and all of the I didn't know about the roaches, but the traffic light, yes. I think that a lot of people now, like myself, take a detour around that intersection for fear of sort of getting stuck there. So that may give some different numbers to it as well. So appreciate you all continuing to look at that.
And I'll lastly echo all the compliments. Mr. Reed, welcome to the city. You're obviously well-credentialed and from the area, so we're really excited to get to have you since Public Works is such an important part of our operations. I'm sure our interim Public Works Director, City Manager, is also happy to have someone fill those shoes. I guess I'll lastly note that our last director stayed 49 years, so we'll see if you can beat him.
We'll try.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Thank you.
Welcome. Mr. City Manager, any report?
Not today.
City Attorney?
Nothing today.
Takes us now to open forum, which is an opportunity for anybody to come forward and speak to whatever matter they'd like to. I do have some speakers cards that were on the 530 Millneck Road. You're welcome to come forward. I won't belabor going through all the cards because I think some people left, but I do see some cards here on the performing arts venue, which is going to be part of an item coming forward on the agenda. So if you'd like to come forward now and speak, that'd fine, or if anybody else would like to speak on anything. Yes, sir. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Scott Jones. My residence is at 522 Millneck Road. I was here to comment on the tabled motion, PCR 23020. I don't want to discuss the merits of that. However, I do want to discuss an allied issue, concern of mine, which is notification for the public hearings. I believe that I was the only resident on Millneck Road who received written notification of this. I guess I'd like to inquire if anybody knows how many citizens of Williamsburg did receive written notification.
Well, go ahead and make your comments.
Yes.
And then staff can
So I
follow
think
up
that's a
with
very
you.
small number. And so my concern is for the credibility of civic governance for a public hearing, for there to be a greater notification, and both the scope of notification and the timeline of the notification. I received my mail on October 28th, so it's a week in advance. As an amateur at this, with a day job, it's very difficult to do the proper research and to know how the process works. And so I think that, if there can be a greater, and furthermore, I have discussed this issue with many people who were unaware that this item was on the agenda until I talked with them, say, midweek. So yes, for the credibility of governance, I think that in looking at those things, the timelines, and how the agenda items for the public hearings are presented to the public would be something worth considering. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Welcome, sir. Can you just state your name and address for the record?
My name is John Craffle. I'm a resident of the city at 106 Robert Cole Court in the Holly Hills subdivision. And I'm here to represent the Performance Venue Group. It's a group formed to advocate for an orchestra hall or a performing arts center. This group maintains contact with 27 local arts and cultural organizations, and they perform for more than 100,000 people each year. Performance Venue Group itself is composed of members or advocates of these 27 agencies, and I should note here that I'm also the vice chair of the Williamsburg Symphony. Earlier this year, the Performance Group joined forces and heard about the multi-purpose live performance center that was being considered by the city, and indeed we have decided that is a positive move for the Performing Arts Center as well. So we understand now that the Performance Arts Center is under consideration, and the Performance Group would like to thank those of you who are considering this as a possibility for our city. The group understands the city's interest in bringing more tourists to the city. We believe that the proposed venue would round out the city's offerings by adding the cultural element to the city's historic, sports, and entertainment attractions. So it brings something for nearly everyone. To that end, should the City Council decide to proceed with this effort, our performance venue group would be happy to support and assist in any way possible in this effort. We understand that the proposed funds may need some additional public or private contribution, and we have already begun efforts to identify potential grants, donors, organizations, and major givers who could become potential donors. Should the city desire this, we would work closely with the city in those fundraising efforts. Should the city seek a professional fundraising authority, if that should come to pass, we would be happy to collaborate with them. We hope that in return that the city would allow us, our group, to be represented and work closely with whatever organization or individuals are selected to take this project forward should the city decide to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate your offer to work with the city, particularly with raising funds. Yes, sir.
I'm Todd Kraus again. You get a two-for today. I just wanted to second this idea of promoting the idea of having a performing arts center in the complex y'all are considering. My daughter plays with the Williamsburg Youth Orchestra. I am the rookie and most exasperating member of the board of directors of that organization. I can tell that our executive director, Tanya Song, who I think is here today, she is always looking for where on earth can we host the next event for the youth orchestra. And we have had to go through various different places. That's fine, she does that work excellently, but it's not something that she should have to consider anew each time. Worse, it's also very difficult to tell family and friends where the event is going to be this time. So it would make everybody's life much easier if we could have one central place that was typically available for these kinds of performances. More along the same lines, many of us have to go out of town for the instructors that we take our kids to. All of the ones I have talked to have said that from their point of view, Williamsburg is a mecca for, especially in our line of work, classical music. But they never have a particular place to go to when they want to see performances, right? It is actually very difficult for me to explain, oh, it's going to be at this church, it's going to be at this high school that's around the corner there, right? If there were a central place, I think it would be that much more to Williamsburg's renown in the area for what seems to be a very diffuse but engaged classical music and performing music community in the area. So I would just like to say that I'm sure all of the board members feel similarly to me, and they would love to see this go forward, and if there's any way I or the rest of us can help, please don't hesitate to let us know. So thank you very much for dealing with me yet again.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Karagian. I'm at 3235 St. James Park. I am also the president and CEO of the Williamsburg Symphony. And so I'm really pleased to be here today in support of a live performance venue. Those of you who know about the Williamsburg Symphony know that we are a professional orchestra that's getting a lot of national acclaim. We actually were on NPR twice this last month on Performance Today, which reaches 2 million visitors. So the arts can not only be really special to our community here, but we're also reaching listeners in the nation that may not be familiar with Williamsburg as an arts destination. So not not only the good work that we're doing, but other wonderful organizations like Virginia Arts Festival and the Opera. So we're getting the name out for our city. But we do need a dedicated place to perform. As much as we love our churches and they've been so kind to us, we really need a space that's open to everyone, that also, if you're not an orchestra person, you don't realize that the hall is actually the instrument for the orchestra. So if you have an incredible orchestra that's not in an actually acoustically good space, that makes it difficult. So I just wanted to say, I hope that you will consider this live performance venue. I know you've got a lot of things to consider, and I also wanted to applaud you for the new fire department and the police station. So I know on your side it's difficult to decide where this money goes. But I do think it really would be something very special for us. So as John said, the symphony itself is really committed to working with you. We do have resources, financial resources, that we are willing to help bring to the table if this becomes something you'd like to support. But this live performance venue really could be a place for music and artistic expression, and a place that can really impact the lives of our residents, and a special place for tourists to experience the magic of our wonderful city. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming forward.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to come speak during the open forum? Seeing none, I'll close that. Before we move on with the agenda, there was a comment made, and I wonder, Ms. Griffin, if you could just talk a little bit about public notification, how that process works, because in my estimation, it's pretty robust.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We send out adjacent property owner letters 3 weeks in advance of the public hearing for the Planning Commission and 3 weeks in advance of the public hearing for the City Council. We put ads in the paper by state requirements 2 weeks in advance for each public hearing, Planning Commission, and City Council. We also post the property 3 weeks in advance with a poster saying that there will be some type of public hearing, and it has a phone number for persons to call. That's posted 3 weeks in advance of the Planning Commission and the City Council, and we also go out to make sure that it's still up, and we did that prior to this meeting. I don't have the count of the adjacent property owners, but everyone adjacent to 530 Mill Neck Road would have received a letter from the department. We also post all of our correspondence on our website, and that's posted 2 weeks in advance of the Planning Commission public hearing and the City Council public hearing.
I would just note, Mayor, all of those things that Ms. Griffin just talked about are statutory requirements, with the exception of the process of posting the actual property, which is an example of us going beyond the state statute.
When you say adjacent, what does that mean?
Adjacent property owners are property owners that the property is actually abutting, contiguous to the property in question. So in this instance, any property that's adjacent to 530 Mill Neck Road would have received a letter.
So I think if one might not assume that something's always going to happen on property adjacent to you, but if you want to know what's happening in the city, certainly subscribe to all of our social medias. There's a notification process that information goes out. So there's lots of opportunity, and I'm sorry that you didn't get information as when you needed it or as soon as you thought you should have gotten it. But the process is, I think, pretty involved. Okay, so that ends our open forums. Takes us now to unfinished business. First is consideration and action regarding the 2023 funding recommendation for the Tourism Development Grant Review Committee. Ms. Scribala.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pons, members of City Council. I presented the Tourism Development Grant Review Committee recommendations last month for your consideration. Will not be going through everything again today, but I will. I just wanted to highlight a couple items as a refresher.
I won't go through it one by one either.
So just, again, I wanted to highlight the purpose of the TDF as outlined in the policy. The money collected through the 1% sales tax goes to these various buckets, as you see here, all with the intention of reinvesting back into tourism for the city. Again, the Tourism Council for marketing the destination, the city's tourism-related outside agencies, the Tourism Promotion Contingency Fund grants for events, and then the TDF grants, which is through the Tourism Development Grant Review Committee. Again, this is the timeline. This is the second cycle of the TDF grant program, with the first one being completed in 2019. After a pause during the pandemic, the TDGRC resumed meeting at the end of 2022 and into 2023. In February, staff hosted 2 information sessions that were open to the public that folks could come out and learn more about the program. Phase 1 opened in February, and there were 11 submissions. Of those, 9 were invited back to Phase 2, and 8 were submitted. There were 4 that were invited to present to TDGRC and staff. Again, that doesn't reflect on the remaining 4. It's just they felt like they had enough information for those to not hear a presentation from them. Let's see here. Staff reviewed and developed its own recommendations that were presented to the TDGRC at its August meeting. From there, the TDGRC came up with the following recommendations. So again, I don't have a slide for each one at this meeting, but I just have 2 slides. The African American Heritage Trail. The city is the applicant. The project cost is around $2.1 million. And the city has requested $316,000 for this fiscal year and then $200,000 for next fiscal year. So we recommend full funding for that. The Colonial Williamsburg Arrival Center. CW is the applicant. The total cost for this one is about $6.2 million. They've requested $1 million. We recommend full funding but split over 2 fiscal years. First Baptist Church, Let Freedom Ring, is working to redesign the vestibule to create a museum space within the church. Their total budget is around $316,000, and their request is for $250,000, and we recommend full funding for this project. I will note that at last month, City Council members requested additional information about the hours that would be put in place once the renovations are complete. Staff requested a document between the church and the foundation that would outline these hours. We did receive this document, and the set hours would be 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Additional tours could be arranged outside of these hours, specifically for larger groups. The only times that would not work for regular hours would be during those Sunday services at 11 a.m. And then Stryker Gallery, the applicant is the library. This project requests new interactive and digital displays. The total project cost is about $45,000, and the ask is $35,000, and we recommend full funding. Oops. Then Wayfinding, the Wayfinding Master Plan Project. The Williamsburg EDA is the applicant. Phase 1 was funded through the 2019 TDF cycle. Phases 2 and 3 include parking signage, and 3 digital kiosks. The ask is for $425,000, and we recommend full funding. Then Wayfinding Phase 4, the applicant is the Williamsburg Public Art Council. Phase 4 includes the construction of 2 large lantern sculptures that would be placed at entry points to the city, welcoming visitors into the city. The Williamsburg Public Art Council voted to commit $100,000 to this project, and the request for the TDF grant programs for $300,000. This is the only one that did not, that the TDGRC did not recommend full funding for. They are recommending $100,000, and again, the reason for this is that they feel like phases 1 through 3 were a little bit more essential right now, and so they want to see more movement on those before committing more funds to phase 4. And then finally, the Williamsburg Entertainment Venue. The applicant is MEB, the company hired to build the indoor sports complex. It would be on the same property as the sports complex on the CW Visitor Center location. Again, a large multi-purpose space featuring both indoor and outdoor performance space. The request is about $33 to $35 million, and the city is recommending funding as outlined here. It's abbreviated. Beginning with $100,000 for both the first 2 years and then $1 million thereafter until debt service is complete. Very similar to what the sports complex is doing. And again, additionally, the city has already allocated $5 million from ARPA funds to build a venue. And then here is the chart. As required in the TDF policy, it's a 5-year projection as based on the recommendations. I do want to say, based on today's budget amendment, some of this will change a little bit to include the funding for the Williamsburg Live. But I have talked to Ms. Dameron about that, and everything works out. If you have any questions, she is happy to help assist with those. Yeah, the top line here represents the TDF tax collections projections. And again, it already accounts for those items like the sports complex. And then I believe that is all I have, but I'm happy to go back to that chart as well. But it is a very abridged version of last month.
Good. Well, I appreciate you coming forward again with this information. As discussed last month, I think all of these projects are outstanding projects that we would not be able to consider had we not had the Historic Triangle Tourism Tax that funds these opportunities. And council had the foresight, I think, then to dedicate these funds to projects that we couldn't do otherwise if it were not for this dedicated funds that really didn't affect our personal property tax increase, didn't require tax increases to accommodate them. And so the process in which we established putting together the TRTD Tourism Grant Review Committee, I think is a good process because it allows for various citizens to be involved in reviewing these applications. And so I appreciate their effort as they, in previous years when they recommended the sports facility and other things that are currently underway. And so I think what they've done again this year, making this recommendation, is in the spirit of growing visitation to Williamsburg, and they've done a great job. And so I support the recommendations. Certainly look forward to future conversations, particularly with the folks that just left who, no, Mr. Kreupel's still here, who's announced that he's still willing to work with the city to help raise funds for the Performing Arts Center. So I think something like that, opportunity along with some other outside funding would be a great asset and contributed to the city. So thank you.
Thank you, Joanne, and I agree that all of these are great projects, and I guess the one thing that people would notice is we are taking a step here to commit that money to that funding to one large project in future years. And I think, Mr. Trivett, you had that figure could change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about a project that is largely still uncertain. And until we really begin the work of investigating what's possible, it's hard to say for sure what the cost will be and where the funding might be able to come from. Obviously, there are grants, there's private sector funding that we could look at raising. There's partner funding that might be involved. We need to evaluate all of that before we really commit to what a share might be from this fund or any local government fund. So I would just say that as we begin the process of investigating that, this is a great way to send the message that we're serious about it and we're going to pursue it, but we need to be flexible in what the ultimate financing plan looks like.
And based on this chart here, it's obvious that the fund can sustain this commitment of the $1 million in the out years.
Yeah, I think one thing that this chart doesn't show is that what we're really talking about is a source of revenue that at least fairly predictably year over year grows in some percentage. And so what we can count on is that this math is going to change anyway because the fund will have more revenue available to it. And how we decide to allocate that will be a decision of the council next year.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm still riding high from last month's presentation that you gave. It was very, very thorough, very good. All these projects are very worthy, and I'm happy to support them. And thank you for that. That was very helpful clarification and kind of the way of thinking about moving forward. So thank you, and to all the members of the TDGRC for a process that really seems to work, and that the investment of their time and those of the applicants is much appreciated.
And I would just like to echo my thanks as well. I think it's very exciting that the city is able to undertake projects of this scope and variety. And like the mayor said, I think we really owe it to us having the foresight to create the TDF and to have funds to invest in these types of projects without impacting what we do for public safety and for other needs of the community. And I also think it's exciting to have one big project under sort of our belt and now to be looking at another one so that we can really cover what people look for in quality of life in a community, as well as sports and sports tourism. We all know that cultural activities and their breadth and depth is very important. I was at the symphony on Saturday at the Ferguson Center, partially because Williamsburg does not have a facility to accommodate that performance. So just one example of where we have the need. So thank you. And I support all of them.
Thank you, Joanna, for the presentation. Part 2, 2.0 maybe. Similarly, as my council colleagues, I'm in favor and supporting of all of these. Their breadth strikes me in investing in local organizations, thinking of First Baptist Church, the Muscarelli Museum of Art, but then also creating some transformative projects. The entertainment venue, we heard a number of supporters from today and appreciate their potential investment with certainly their time, but also the treasure in that idea. But the Heritage Trail strikes me as another real new asset for Williamsburg too. So thank you for coming and presenting again. I am also in favor of all reported on here and excited to see the TDGRC and its funding to come.
I think it's noted one of the projects that is being supported here is one of the ones from the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, the African American Heritage Trail. So we're kind of establishing good framework there. So would somebody like to make a motion?
Yes, I move that City Council approve the funding recommendations of the TDGRC for the 2023 Tourism Development Fund grant cycle.
Second?
Sir Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher?
Aye.
Okay, takes us to item B, the direction regarding the proposed advancement of the Truth and Reconciliation Report. Mr. Trivett.
I'm just going to assume they were applauding for me.
Then one of us is wrong.
Yeah, right, exactly. There we go. All right, so last month we began a conversation about the Truth and Reconciliation Report and how we advance. Oh, you want?
Just give us a second.
Yeah, sure. We'll give it a minute.
I'm okay.
Okay, Mr. Trivett, if you'll continue.
All right, so last month we began a conversation about how we advance the topics and items that were recommended by the Truth and Reconciliation Report. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time going back through all of them, but I will sort of hit the highlights of this. Obviously, we spent a lot of time working on Truth and Reconciliation at this point, a little over 2 years, and we're pretty excited to have the recommendations from the committee and certainly appreciate their time and effort in getting to this point. They had 5 recommendations that they put into these boxes, and within these boxes was a whole host of ideas, concepts, and even strategies that they felt like the city council, the city government, and the community should consider to advance the idea of truth and reconciliation in Williamsburg. From that, the staff got together and looked at these recommendations and wanted to come up with some initial advancements that the city council can consider as we decide how to push forward these ideas. And so these are the advancements that the staff initially recommended for consideration. The first is, adding to and significantly enhancing the investment that's planned in the African American Heritage Trail. We know that that's going to be an expensive project, and as of this moment, we don't have all the money programmed. We're certainly applying for grants as we can, some of which we're getting, some of which we're not. Ultimately, I think it's reasonable to expect that the local government, the city, is going to have to put some additional funding there to see that project through to completion. A second one is to invite WJCC to a work session to talk about DEI efforts. Another is to advance the process of doing minority-focused business grants through the EDA. Another is to begin tracking DEI spending more specifically in the budget. This is similar to something that we did a few years ago with police department, human services, and fire department spending in shared services related to mental health. Hire a DEI consultant to help advise the city not only on paths that we might take related to advancement of this study, but also to help us work on internal culture and training. An RFP development for Blayton and Triangle properties that focuses on improving and making available more opportunities for minority businesses to occupy that area as we consider redevelopment. And then finally, launching a student scholarship program focused on the minority community. So today what we're asking for is the City Council provide direction to staff. As you all know, the GIOs for the current period prescribe that we're going to tackle 2 recommendations from the now completed report. And so we've asked that the council provide direction to staff on which of 2 of these advancements you'd like us to take on. I will go ahead and note that we are only about 10 months away from beginning a new GIO cycle, which includes, and I think it's important that we say this as many times as we can, because I know people get lost in the process of government, and that is part of that GIO process is opening the hood of all of the old plans and studies that had recommendations that have as of yet not been fulfilled, and the council still considers to be a priority. And we put all of that back on the table for consideration. And as we go through the public process of determining what the work plan should be for the next 2 years, all of that gets reevaluated so that those plans, those recommendations don't get lost, and we begin to tackle the next set. The same thing will be true with the Truth and Reconciliation report. We'll consider it in much the same fashion, and of course it's my expectation that there'll be further action items beyond the 2 that you might direct us to do today in the next GIO set. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Trivett. You know, the report that we got back from the committee, I think, did a great job in kind of outlining, you know, these recommendations. And so I just want to take a moment to thank all those that served on the committee, because, you know, it wasn't an easy task to get everyone together and really dig into the issues. But that takes me back to why we got started on this. I think council wanted to make sure that we were doing everything that we could in being responsible to all of our citizens equally in that truth-telling and reconciling where we may be deficient and where we may have been deficient in the past, and how can we kind of make amends for that. And so it kind of takes us to the feedback that we've gotten in these recommendations, and wanting, and then our GIOs wanting to try to accomplish at least 2 of the things that came in the report. And as I mentioned during the previous item on the agenda, the African American Heritage Trail, while it's a recommendation of the TRC, is already a program that the city is undertaking, and we have put forth efforts to find funding to make that happen. And the previous approval, I think we're yet one step closer to making that come to reality. And so I almost take that off the table as something that's being accomplished. The other 2 things that I think are most important, one would be track DEI spending and bringing in the consultant, a DEI consultant, as the city manager just mentioned, because I think what that affords us the opportunity is to look inward into the organization to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to be responsible to all of our citizens, and I think that's an important step. You know, they can dig into, you know, all the ordinances and codes and you know, whatever it needs to be looked at to make sure that we are being responsible to everybody. So I think that's an important one. And then being able to offer some form of student scholarship, I think would go a long way to helping advance some folks in our community that may not have that same opportunity to further their education, whether it's at college, in college, or earning certificates or other types of degree certificates that help them in their potential career field. So those are the two that I can really get behind. I think all of them are worthy endeavors, and some of them, the Blayton building would certainly be a major undertaking, and certainly something that we consider as we move forward into the next GIO session. So those are the two that I would like to see us support. Vice Mayor, any thoughts, comments?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And again, I too would like to thank the committee for all of the work that went into this. And I know one of the things that this council was committed to was not just putting together a report and we put the check in the box. And to your point about the African American Heritage Trail, while it's important, that's a project that we already have going forward. So we could easily grasp that as one of our initiatives, two initiatives for now. But I agree, because that's underway, that we kind of take that off the selection. Also believe that hiring the DEI consultant up front is very important, because it would cover an umbrella of things that would help us improve our community. And the words that jumped out to me was fostering a welcoming community. That there's a lot of different aspects of that, and I think a DEI consultant would be very valuable. And I also agree that the student scholarships would be something that we could grasp really quickly and start moving that forward. But as Mr. Trivett pointed out, we don't have a lot of time that we're going to be selecting the next two for our next GIO cycle. So I too agree that those would be two important recommendations that we could take now and move them forward.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, well, yes, looking at these, I don't have a whole lot to add to what has already been stated by the mayor and vice mayor. I think that hiring the DEI consultant from the beginning here is a very smart move. And then looking at, for me, looking at the student scholarships as well as the EDA business grants, those are two things I think of as really making investments to help, our students and our businesses and our communities move forward. But I think that there are, good reasons to kind of move forward with the consultant and the student scholarships at this time, and then thinking about, spending the time after we get these two moving through the pipeline to see, we might learn how might we do the grants for minority-owned businesses, better. We'll have more information a little bit later than we have right now, and so I think that. For me, I agree. I land with these as well. And again, knowing that this is a process where it's going to be moving on several tracks at the same time. It isn't just one road and everybody has to get on that road. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, and eventually we will be when we have these going after our next GIO process gets underway. So I am in agreement with those two as our first ones.
Ditto.
All right.
So just to say that I think by hiring the DEI consultant up front, that'll give us information and knowledge on programs that could better impact what we do in the other boxes, particularly for minority grants and tracking the spending and things like that. So I think that's sort of doing first step first. And as far as you mentioned, the Blayton building and 21st Triangle, I think that's what we do there is somewhat dependent on our next steps in that location with the police department and the library. So again, taking things in a reasonable step. And timeline, as others have said, we're already in progress, not only with the TDGRC money for the African American Heritage Trail, but also with the federal funds that we're anticipating. And I've very much in favor of scholarships for students of all ages and all capabilities. So I think that provides us with a lot of opportunity to help a wide range of people. So.
Rogers?
Similarly, I favor these two. I'll first point out what I know has already been mentioned, but of the 7 recommendations here, having 2 is more in line with what council said we would act on this year, 2 in 2023. That's not to say that 5 will then be taken off the table. Like our city manager said, within 10 months, we're at another GIO cycle. The TRC's recommendations are very wide, and so we'll be able to act on more of these than just these 2. The reason, though, that the student scholarships and the DEI consultant, though, I think are best for the city is because I, one, worry about the already great deal of work that we ask of staff and needing to find available staff time to continue on some of the DEI programs or reviews that we may have for the city of Williamsburg. It strikes me that a consultant would be perfectly positioned and having that available time to do such work. The second is that the TRC, Truth and Reconciliation Committee, feels most connected to me in the reconciling by pairing a direct program to benefit young people in Williamsburg and students who can trace lineage back to our historic families that have been in Williamsburg for generations. And whether that means scholarships for college or trade school or just ad hoc learning about coding in a boot camp, I think that the scholarships idea and the DEI consultant are our best 2 because they most closely pair the city to directly addressing and reconciling with some of Williamsburg's most historic families and also giving us the time and availability through new staff positions to approach some of this work. That's why I'm in favor of those 2 as well.
So it's clear that there's a consensus. So Mr. City Manager, do you have what you need from that, or do you need it in the form of a motion to move forward?
I don't think I need a motion. I think that was good enough. If we were having a work session today, this would have been a work session item and just a general conversation with some direction. I think it's clear that you all propose that we move ahead with 2 of these, and so that's what we'll do.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Any other adding to that? No? Okay. Thank you all for that. Takes us to item C. It's consideration and action regarding proposed resolution. Proposed resolution 23-18 establishing the City of Williamsburg's 2024 legislative agenda. Mr. Trivett.
Let me cycle through the remainder of this presentation to get to that one. Here we go. So annually we do a legislative agenda to take our issues forward to Richmond and to the federal government. As part of doing that, we develop the agenda considering our community partners' needs. We contact everybody on this list and some others to find out what they might be proposing and where our agendas might align so that we can make sure that we're advocating appropriately and efficiently. Some support organizations as well that are consulted, and as you can see there, it's a pretty big list. These are all agencies or groups that we're a part of and members of. All of them adopt their own legislative agendas, so if you're keeping track, there's a lot of agendas on the table that go up to Richmond. Most of the groups that you see on this list, when they adopt their legislative agendas, have a caveat that mentions the fact that these are member-driven organizations, many of whom have lots of members, and not all of them may support the entirety of the agenda, but certainly support the merit of it. And so ours is very similar in that way. The organization of our agenda, as I said, there are so many agendas that float around in Richmond. It's important to be concise and to stick to the things that really matter. And so our agenda is designed to do that. We have an intent statement. We try to limit ourselves to 3 or 4 priority issues. These are the ones that we consider to be the most important in this session to the City Council. Then we have other issues of focus, which is a longer list of things that we know are on the plate in Richmond that we want to have an opinion on or urge action for, and then partner agency issues. Those are the ones that we know there's consistency and it's important to the City Council, it's important to them, and so we include them in our agenda as well as on theirs. Our first priority issue is local zoning authority. I think that one of the conversations that we have had a lot as a region and as a city is that there's going to be a lot of change in Richmond this year. There'll be a lot of new faces, and that is an opportunity for some of the old battles to be refought. And so I think there's an expectation that some of the older issues, such as cellular rights of ways and poles and those kinds of things, maybe even short-term rentals, coming back in a new and revised fashion. And so we just want to urge that the state consider the fact that local zoning authority is important for a reason. Not every locality has the same needs as Williamsburg. So a one-size-fits-all solution that might be proposed in Richmond often is not the best answer. So we hope to encourage them to consider allowing us to keep the permissions that we have as we negotiate with those companies that seek to put things in our rights of way or operate inside the city in the best interest of the community. Public notice reform, this is something that was a carryover from the last agenda, and this is just really talking about the fact that as technology has evolved, our public noticing requirement really has not. We're still required to do a pretty lengthy advertisement in the newspaper, and there's a lot of question about how effective that is anymore. And so I think the question is, can that be augmented by other forms of notice provision that might be more effective? Virginia 250 is another one. Obviously, we're fast approaching this date, and we want to take the opportunity to urge the state, who operates a state committee as well as our local committees, to commit funding so that as we proceed with preparing for what we hope to be a very large commemoration, we can tackle some of the infrastructure projects and community needs that could be celebrated as a legacy project associated with the commemoration. The Birthplace of America Trail is another one. This is a project that we've been pursuing for some time. It's a priority project, not just for the city of Williamsburg, but for the whole region. The connection of the Capitol Trail all the way through Williamsburg, down to Fort Monroe, and even through an alternative route that goes all the way to Virginia Beach is an important one. And so we would ask the state to consider providing funding to help get that executed. Passenger rail is obviously always another issue of focus as we consider major transportation routes in and out of the city. More and more people are asking for alternatives to driving, and passenger rail service is a good one. The Amtrak model is to get you there within 1 minute of drive time, and if you've taken the train from Williamsburg to D.C., sometimes that's the case, and sometimes it is not the case. Just like on 95, the traffic is a factor, and how many trains can fit through the various yards of Richmond is typically the delay. And so we're always asking for improvements to be considered as to the timing and frequency of our Williamsburg trains. Investments in William & Mary, as I said, we contact our partner agencies and get a solid list of what they're asking for, and to the extent that our agendas and motives align, we share emphasis so that we can hopefully get more attention on the issues. This is a collection of some of the things that William & Mary asked us to include in our list. And the timeline. As you all can see, this is going to be a long session, not meaning it's longer than usual, just that that's what they call it. It's a long session. It's a total of 60 days instead of 30. And so today we're in November presenting what we hope to be the legislative agenda, assuming that you all approve it. And then we'll turn that into something formal that we can present to the legislature beginning in January when the session begins. In the between time, we will host a legislative event, as we do every year with our legislators, and go over this legislative agenda as well as hear their forecast for what the legislative session might hold, and hopefully have some really good conversation about the needs of the state and how they align with the cities. Happy to answer any questions.
So thank you, Drew. I think those are the big ones for sure, and the one that's most alarming to me, well, they all have different implications, but certainly the local zoning issue for me, and losing the ability to regulate what happens in the city to the state, making something short-term rentals is the one that really concerns me the most. Is that the General Assembly could easily just say local zoning ordinances don't apply to short-term rentals for a certain sect of people, realtors, and then we would have short-term rentals everywhere, and I just think that's problematic. And to your point, not every community, is the same, and we can't all be treated the same. So I think we have a good list here. And so I applaud the efforts of staff in working with our regional partners to put together this list. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good list, and thanks to staff for putting it together. And I agree the zoning issues are extremely important, and I think because Group C, the opportunity to influence new legislators this year is going to be even more challenging. Try to plead our case for that.
I agree. I think it's a great list, particularly, the zoning, keeping zoning decisions local. And then hardly a few days go by that somebody doesn't mention the passenger rail, needs and opportunities that we might have. So I think it's important on several levels. I think in order to connect us to other parts of the region in a way that is efficient and best for everyone. So I'm glad to see that there as well.
I too am thankful for the list. I think we've learned over the years that keying in on a few priority issues makes much more sense than having sort of a shotgun approach. So I think it's particularly good that we've done that, as well as consult all of our partners as we normally do.
And I similarly am in favor of the legislative agenda and don't have anything else to add. So thank you for the presentation.
Somebody like to make a motion?
So I move that City Council approve Resolution 23-18, establishing the City of Williamsburg's 2024 legislative agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. McKay?
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernshare?
Aye.
Okay, takes us to new business, and first item there is consideration and action regarding the proposed resolution 23-16, accepting the FY24 State of Good Repair paving funds. Mr. Small, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor Dent, members of council. I'll try to keep this short and sweet. This is the FY24 State of Good Repair resurfacing. Last year, we applied for funds for Capital Landing Road between Bypass Road and Merrimack Trail. This was part of an overall program to deal with the inflationary increases we've seen on that project. So what this does, using the State of Good Repair funding program, we're able to actually provide for the paving resurfacing and all the restriping with the road diet that is part of that overall project, and cover those costs 100% with the State of Good Repair funding. You're very familiar with this program. It's one of my favorite programs in that all of the money, nearly all of the money, gets put straight into the asphalt and stone that we use out on the roads. So the VDOT requires us a resolution for that, and so before you today is that resolution asking to accept the funds and begin the contract of $1.145 million for Capital Landing Road from Bypass Road to Merrimack Trail. This work, we will advertise it before the end of the fiscal year, so really almost on the last day of the fiscal year, but we probably won't start the construction until spring of 2025 in order to time it with some of the other work that's going on out there.
Well, thank you, Mr. Small. I think applying for these funds to help offset those additional costs is a smart thing to do, so thank you for making that happen for us. Just a question on that. Are we going to mill the current asphalt, or will the whole road get?
This will actually allow us to, we're going to mill the existing asphalt down. Underneath that asphalt, if you weren't aware of it, is a concrete road. And so what we can do is we're going to mill probably about an inch off of the asphalt, put down a fabric so that we can deal with all of those joints that you bump as you drive along that road. And then what we'll do is place about an inch and a half of asphalt on top of that. And so what you'll see is on the one side where the bike lane will be, we'll actually, that'll be a flush up to the edge of the asphalt, but we'll probably have about an inch bump on the ones, or a half an inch on the other side.
Thank you.
Yeah, no questions. Thank you, Mr. Small.
No questions. Just want to always say it's nice to count on you to find us extra money, and always glad to vote to spend that money.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Small.
So I move that City Council approve Resolution 23-18, accepting the funds and authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents relative to carrying out the State of Good Repair program.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernshare?
Aye.
Okay, takes us next to consideration and action regarding the proposed ordinance number 23-06, adding section 2-204 to chapter 2, article 5 of the Williamsburg Code to govern election signs at the central absentee precinct. Ms. Shelton.
So the voter registrar has requested that City Council consider adopting an ordinance to govern campaign signs on the municipal building property. As council knows, that's where early voting happens at the central absentee precinct, and with early voting, those signs are out for a couple of months during the fall and during primary elections. And so the ordinance in front of you provides for 2 signs per candidate at the municipal building during early voting. It allows the candidates to put the signs up at the beginning of early voting, and they have to take the signs down the day after early voting ends. It prescribes a sign size of 18 inches by 24 inches. It provides that the signs can't be placed in a manner interfering with the operations of the municipal building or violating state law with respect to the 40-foot line within the polling place. It provides that the signs not meeting that requirement will be removed, and it doesn't authorize any other signage besides those 2 signs per candidate. The signs have been permitted pursuant to a permit issued by the city manager up to this point. This provides a little more certainty. It's in the city code, which is why the registrar has asked for this to be added to the city code. This does not impact anyone coming to the municipal building parking lot and campaigning outside. That's still going to be done pursuant to a permit. It doesn't prohibit the tents or campaigns or political parties from coming and talking to candidates or talking to voters coming into the municipal building. This is just a regulation of the actual signs. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and also Ms. Reitzel is here if you have any questions for her.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for that report. It just made me think what we ought to put in our legislative agenda is to limit early voting to only 15 days before.
I would love it, but
It's
it's actually on our legislative agenda too, so.
Should we put that in there? So this makes sense. I think it kind of takes the burden off of you, because this now, being a part of the Code of Williamsburg, you can easily say that's the law. And it's not something that you as the voter registrar is arbitrarily enforcing on candidates. So I certainly support it.
Yeah, I support it as well. I think it's a logical move.
Same. I think the clarity, the straightforwardness of it, I think is good, and it leaves, just a bit of a nice objective standard for everyone to adhere to. And just to clarify that this is only during the early voting. This doesn't do anything for election day itself when folks, candidates and voters alike go to their regular precincts. This is only during the early voting period.
Only during early voting. It only applies to the municipal building. It doesn't apply to any other polling place. It's just to deal with early voting.
Right. So I appreciate the clarity. So yes, I support this.
Thank you, and I appreciate it as well. Just one question, and it may have been brought up and I missed it. So this is only for signs. What happens if someone wants to erect a little canopy tent? If someone told me that.
So with tents and tables and that kind of thing on public property, they would need a special event permit, which
Okay.
my office issues. And that's how we're handling it right now.
Okay, thank you. No other questions?
And thank you, Tina. I'm also in favor of this. I think it's very clear. It's very unbiased. It's just very simple. So I'm sure we won't get too much pushback. And obviously, as has been mentioned, I'm an early voter myself. Got to see you in the polls the other day. But I know that a lot of people still vote on Election Day, and there will be no change to the parties, the candidates, anyone, as usually those polling places are held on private land and outside the municipal area. So thanks for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it.
So I move that City Council adopt ordinance 23-06.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernshire?
Aye.
Takes us to item C, which is consideration and action regarding the proposed resolution 23-17 for the participation of the Department of Criminal Justice Service Crime Prevention Community Program. Chief Dunn, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Thank you for having us. We're here to ask for your support today for a resolution to support our application to be a certified crime prevention community. This is an opportunity for us to demonstrate our, what we think are incredible partnerships that we have with our community members, as well as a number of strategic partners throughout the community. And this really formalizes that for us. We feel like this is the next step for us to build that trust with our community and that legitimacy in our community. I've asked Officer Herb Williams, who I know you all know very well, to come and talk a bit more about it, because this really is his project and he's put considerable time into it. So, Herb.
Williams, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. Thank you for having me. This is an honor and a privilege for the first time to be here before you all. I want to talk a little bit about how the the crime prevention community certification came about. In 1998, Governor James Gilmore motioned an executive order that created the new Partnership Commission of Community Safety, and their responsibility was to advise the governor on community safety initiatives. They asked the Department of Criminal Justice Services to create an initiative that was geared towards developing and adopting community safety initiatives for the youth and also family members. Moving forward to 2017, our police chief, Chief Dunn, he actually implemented a program known as the Neighborhood Resource Officer Program, which I didn't find out until later in 2018 when I was sitting in the academy with actually Lieutenant Tim Walker here, who actually told me a lot about Chief Dunn and his initiative to implement more community safety initiatives into this community, which prompted me to come here as a police officer in hopes to implement this program. Later in 2022, I was given the opportunity to be a part of the Leadership Institute at the Regional Academy, where then, as an assignment, I was to create an executive brief for the chief. And at that time, that executive brief was the Crime Prevention Community Certification. With that being said, I got to work on taking a look at all 19 elements that was required by DCJS to prove that the City of Williamsburg did actually meet all the requirements to be a certified crime prevention community. With that being said, some of the benefits of this initiative is actually, well, for one, it better enhances our ability to market the city as a safe community for tourists, family members, those who are looking to move here, and even event planners. Another benefit to this would actually be that we will get preference for state grants in terms of criminal justice. Also, to add to that, you might like this one, premiums reduction as a result of this preference. This program This program is a very unique program, as it is across the nation, as it is one of the very few that actually is geared towards community safety. Lastly, another benefit to this initiative is that it enhances our professionalism here in the city and as a police department. Right now, since the creation of this program, there are 12 cities throughout the entire Commonwealth. And I have worked very hard with my community engagement team to put together a packet that proved to DCJS that we meet that standard, that rigorous standard that sets us apart from many other municipalities throughout the Commonwealth, and they accept it. So now, with your approval, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, we would like to push forward and participate in this program.
Officer Williams, thank you. Thank you for bringing this forward, and thank you for the enthusiasm in which you approached your job every day. It certainly makes me proud to live in Williamsburg, and makes me proud to have a department that our community can rely on and depend on. Not just to be out there patrolling the streets, but to work in this community, work within our community to make sure that relationships are forged, and make sure that these types of opportunities are sought after and found for us, that premium savings. I mean, that's just an added benefit, but that's just a side thing. It's who you all are, you know, fire as a police department representing Williamsburg that makes us even more special. So thank you for bringing this to us. So it's certainly something I'm going to support.
Thank you, Officer Williams, and just to echo what the mayor said with your enthusiasm, I know I see you at events and I've seen you in my neighborhood, but having worked in public safety, I know what having someone with your positive outlook and positive influence and what it means to other officers in Williamsburg. But I think one of the things that it's great to have that title, but I think you've pointed out many reasons that it's advantageous to Williamsburg, and one of the important ones is, you know, if people looking at it for an event venue in Williamsburg or moving their family here, so it has far-reaching advantages for the city, just beyond a recognition that you know, is given through DCJS. So thank you for your work on that, and thank you for what you do every day.
Yes, I just want to echo the thank you for taking this initiative and making this happen. I think it's really exciting, and it's just, I'm honored to be here with you and to see you around town. I feel like I see you all the time. I was like, hey, what's up? So, you know, it's really, it just really is a testament to your commitment to your job, to our town, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I don't have too much more to say, just to emphasize that I applaud your taking the steps and having the motivation to do all of this and pull it together. I mean, reading all of the different benefits, there was a lot of research that went into this, and so really appreciate it, and I think it'll have benefits that will reach all corners of the city. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Officer Williams, thank you. It's good to see you again. I hope you feel really a sense of pride too, and it sounds like a while ago, right, briefing the chief on this opportunity and then getting to bring it through the department. I'm sure bringing a lot of other of your colleagues to talk about it and the benefit as well, and now coming in front of council. So thank you. It sounds like for us, just from a practical standpoint, there's opportunities for significant savings through priority with state grants. But also, one of the things we're proud of is our department is accredited, and we have the NRO program. And so this is another feather in the cap, if you will, for what the Williamsburg PD will have. To that note, too, just earlier today, I saw on my front door a neighbor had come by, put a little note that said, hey, Wednesday, 4 p.m., come to this house. We're all going to meet our NRO. So just a little community group that was convening to get to meet the NRO who had reached out on their own accord. I thought that was so special, right? So thank you. I'm excited to support this. Appreciate you always putting the Williams in Williamsburg.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Perfect. Thank you all. So would someone like to make a motion?
So I move that City Council approve Resolution 23-17 for participation in the Department of Criminal Justice Services Crime Prevention Community Program. That's a mouthful.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher?
Aye.
Thank you, Officer Williams.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe we have closed session next on the agenda. Mr. Vice Mayor, do we?
We do. I move to go into closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of discussing one legal matter pursuant to subparagraph 7 for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members, consultants, or attorneys pertaining to actual or probable litigation concerning elections, and one matter pursuant to subparagraph 11 for the purpose of discussing a special award.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher?
Aye.
Okay, so we're going into closed session. When we return, we'll go back into open session and conclude the meeting. back into open session. Mr. Vice Mayor, do you have a motion?
I move to approve the certification of a closed session pursuant to section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia.
Second.
Ms. McKay?
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher?
Aye.
There's no other business. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Okay?
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.